My son told me I wasn't invited to Christmas, so I canceled his mortgage payment. My name is Frank Miller, and I'm a 63-year-old retired electrician from Boston. For 3 years, I've been paying $2,890 every month to keep my son and his wife in their dream house. For 3 years, I've listened to her gently correct my grammar, watched my boy distance himself from everything his mother and I taught him, and pretended not to notice when they parked me in the back row at family photos. But when my Harvard-educated son decided I wasn't suitable for Christmas dinner with his in-laws at their country club, something inside me snapped. What happened next exposed lies that went deeper than I ever imagined and changed our family forever. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I simply opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and made one small change that would cost them everything. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is the story of how a man who wired half the houses in this city taught his son that respect isn't optional. It's earned. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because I wasn't always the guy canceling mortgage payments. 3 years ago, I was just a proud father watching his son get married. David is my only child. 28 years old, marketing manager at a tech firm, graduated from Harvard Extension. Everything his mother and I dreamed of when we scrimped and saved to put him through school. We thought we'd done everything right. Then he met Victoria Sterling. Victoria is a corporate lawyer, 31 years old, pulls down $180,000 a year, comes from old Boston money. The kind of family that's had membership at Riverside Country Club since 1952. The kind of family that says summer as a verb. I should have seen the warning signs at their wedding. Actually, I did see them. I just didn't want to believe what I was seeing. The first sign happened during the rehearsal dinner. We're all sitting around this long table at some fancy restaurant in Back Bay. Victoria's father is telling stories about their family's real estate investments. Her mother is discussing their upcoming trip to Martha's Vineyard. Normal rich people conversation, nothing wrong with that. But then Victoria turns to me and says, "Frank, why don't you tell everyone about your work?" The pause before work lasted exactly long enough for everyone to notice. Like she was searching for the most polite way to say blue-collar job. So I started talking about electrical contracting. How I built my business from nothing, worked on some of the biggest construction projects in Greater Boston, employed 12 guys at my peak. I was proud of what I'd accomplished, but Victoria kept helping me. Every few sentences she'd jump in with little corrections. What Frank means is he managed electrical installations. That's fascinating. So you were essentially a project coordinator. Oh. Like facilities management. Each correction made my 40 years of expertise sound smaller, more manageable, less embarrassing for her guests to hear. David sat there silent. Didn't say a word. The second warning sign came 6 months later. David and Victoria bought their house, a beautiful colonial in Newton, $485,000. They invited me over for a housewarming party. When I pulled up in my 2018 F-150, David came jogging out before I could get to the front door. "Hey, Dad, would you mind parking around back? Victoria's colleagues are here and, well, you know how it is." I didn't know how it was, but I moved my truck. Inside, I watched my son introduce me to his friends. "This is my father, Frank. He's retired." That's it. No mention of what I retired from. No mention of the business I built. No mention of the fact that I'd paid for his entire education. Just retired, like I was collecting Social Security and playing shuffleboard. But here's what really got to me. Victoria spent the whole evening correcting my English. "Actually, Frank, I think you mean regardless, not irregardless. The proper phrase is couldn't care less, not could care less. It's for all intents and purposes, not for all intensive purposes." Every correction delivered with this sweet smile, like she was doing me a favor, like she was helping me become more presentable. And David? He nodded along like she was his personal English tutor instead of his father. I started seeing the pattern everywhere. Family dinners where Victoria would translate my stories for her parents. Holiday gatherings where David would steer conversations away from my work. Phone calls that got shorter and shorter. I was becoming the embarrassing relative. The one you love but try to keep at arm's length when company comes over. But I kept quiet, kept paying bills, kept hoping this phase would pass and my son would remember where he came from. That was my first mistake, thinking silence would preserve our relationship instead of destroying it. You need to understand what was really at stake here. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or family drama. This was about watching my son's soul disappear, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. See, 3 years ago, right around David's wedding, my wife Patricia was dying of cancer. We'd been married 34 years. She was a kindergarten teacher, toughest woman I ever knew. Could handle a classroom of 25 5-year-olds and still have energy to help me with business paperwork at night. But cancer doesn't care how tough you are. The treatments cost everything. Even with insurance, we were looking at $89,340 in out-of-pocket expenses. Experimental drugs, specialist consultations, travel to Mass General 3 times a week. I sold my electrical contracting business to cover those bills. 40 years of building something, gone in 6 months. But it was worth it. Every penny was worth it if it meant more time with Patricia. She died on March 15th, 2021. David was there, holding her hand, crying like the little boy I remembered. For a moment I thought grief might bring us back together. Patricia's last words to David were simple. Take care of your father. Family is everything. 2 weeks after the funeral, David and Victoria came to me with a proposal. Dad, David said, we found this amazing house in Newton. It's perfect for starting a family. But the mortgage is going to be tight with Victoria's student loans. Victoria jumped in with that helpful tone. We were thinking, since you have some life insurance money and David is your only heir anyway, maybe you could help with the down payment. Think of it as an early inheritance. They needed $125,000 for the down payment and closing costs. I had $312,000 left after Patricia's medical bills and the business sale. Everything we'd saved over 34 years of marriage compressed into one bank account. But here's what they didn't tell me. They wanted me to pay the monthly mortgage too. Just temporarily, Victoria explained. Until David gets his next promotion, maybe 2 years max. $2,890 a month, every month, for 2 years max. I said yes because Patricia's words were still ringing in my ears. Family is everything. But 2 years became 3 years. David's promotion never materialized. His temporary need for help became permanent dependence. And the longer I paid, the less respect I got. You see, here's what I learned about money and family. When you're paying someone's bills, they start to resent you for it. Not grateful, resentful. Because every dollar you give them is a reminder that they can't make it on their own. David started avoiding my calls. Victoria started treating me like hired help instead of family. They'd invite me to dinner and ask me to fix that outlet in the kitchen while you're here. I was becoming the family ATM with a toolkit. But if I stopped paying, what would happen? First, they'd lose the house. That $485,000 property would go into foreclosure within 90 days. David's credit would be destroyed. Victoria's law firm partners would start asking questions about their financial stability. Second, David would never forgive me. He'd see it as abandonment, not accountability. I'd lose my son completely. Third, Patricia's last wish, take care of your father, would become meaningless. Because the truth was, I'd been taking care of them. But here's what scared me most. If I kept quiet, kept paying, kept accepting their disrespect, David would never learn to stand on his own. He'd become exactly what Victoria's family already thought he was. A charity case who married up and brought his embarrassing father along for the ride. I was watching my son disappear into someone else's idea of who he should be. Every mortgage payment I made was funding his transformation from the kid who helped me rewire houses during summer breaks into this stranger who was ashamed of where he came from. The money wasn't the real stake. I could afford $2,890 a month. What I couldn't afford was watching my boy lose his soul one payment at a time. Patricia used to say, money is just a tool, Frank, but respect is the foundation of every relationship. I was giving them the tool while they were demolishing the foundation. That's what was really at stake. Not just our relationship, but David's character. And I was starting to realize that my generosity wasn't helping him become a better man. It was enabling him to become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who would exclude his own father from Christmas because he wasn't suitable for polite company. The question I kept asking myself was simple. What would Patricia want me to do? And I was starting to think I knew the answer. The phone call that changed everything came on December 15th, 2024 at 7:23 p.m. I was in my workshop, organizing my tools, a habit I'd kept from 40 years of running jobs, everything in its place, labeled and clean. Patricia used to joke that my workshop was neater than our kitchen. My phone rang, David's name on the screen. Hey, Dad. Hey, son. How's everything going? Good, good. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about Christmas. Sure. What time should I come over? Pause. Longer than it should have been. Well, that's the thing. We're doing Christmas at the club this year. Sounds nice. What time should I be there? Actually, Victoria's parents are flying in from Connecticut. Okay, more family. They're staying through New Year's. I see. Another pause. I could hear Victoria talking in the background, but couldn't make out the words. It's just, they're used to a certain environment. What kind of environment? You know, formal dinners, wine tastings, that sort of thing. David, are you saying I'm not invited to Christmas? It's not that simple, Dad. Yes or no, son? Am I invited to Christmas dinner? Longest pause yet. Not this year, Dad. I'm sorry. I set down the socket wrench I was holding, placed it very carefully in its designated spot. I see. Look, we'll do something, just the three of us. Maybe the day after Christmas. Victoria suggested we could take you to that diner you like on Route 1. The diner I like. Like I was a child being offered a consolation prize. David, can you put Victoria on the phone? Dad, she's busy helping her mom with put her on the phone. Muffled conversation. Footsteps. Then Victoria's voice, bright and professional. Hi, Frank. David told me you two were chatting about the holidays. Victoria, I have a simple question. Of course. In 3 years, how much money have I given you and David? I'm sorry. Simple math. Monthly mortgage payments. 3 years. How much? Frank, I don't think this is the right time. $104,040. That's how much. Silence. Plus the down payment, $125,000. Plus the closing costs I covered, $8,200. Total, $137,240. Frank, we're incredibly grateful. Are you? Of course we are. Then why am I not invited to Christmas? It's complicated. David's been working so hard to build relationships with important clients. My father's firm represents some of the biggest... Stop. I'm sorry? I said stop. You're explaining why I'm embarrassing. I asked why I'm not invited. Frank, that's not what I meant. Yes, it is. I could hear David in the background. Is everything okay? Victoria covered the phone. More muffled conversation. Then David was back on the line. Dad, you're taking this the wrong way. How should I take it? It's just one Christmas. Victoria's parents are very traditional. They're not used to mixing social circles. Social circles. You know what I mean. No, David, I don't. Explain it to me. Dad, come on. Explain to me what social circle I belong to. You're being difficult. I'm being specific. What social circle? Silence. David, your mother died believing you were a good man. Don't bring Mom into this. She's already in this. Every dollar I've paid toward your mortgage was money she and I saved together for 34 years. Dad, she died believing you'd take care of family, not manage them, not exclude them, take care of them. We do take care of you. How? We invite you to dinner. We call you. When's the last time you asked about my life? Pause. When's the last time you asked if I needed anything? Longer pause. When's the last time you treated me like your father instead of your bank account? That's not fair. Fair would be being invited to Christmas after paying for your house. Dad, you're making this harder than it needs to be. No, David, you're making this exactly as hard as it needs to be. I could hear Victoria coaching him in the background. Look, David said, we'll make it up to you. New Year's Eve, maybe. We could... David. Yeah? Do you remember helping me rewire the Kellys' house when you were 16? What does that have to do with anything? Do you remember what you said when Mrs. Kelly tried to tip you $20? Dad, I really don't see... You said, no, ma'am, I'm family. Family doesn't charge family. Silence. You were 16 years old and you understood something about respect that you've forgotten at 28. This is different. How? Dad, please. Can we just agree to celebrate on the 26th? I walked over to my workbench and picked up the framed photo of Patricia holding baby David. 28 years ago. Different lifetime. David, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is your father invited to Christmas dinner? Dad, yes or no? No, you're not invited. I set the photo down. Okay. Dad, wait. I said okay. Are you mad? No, son, I'm clear. What does that mean? It means I finally understand what's happening here. Dad, you're scaring me. Good night, David. Dad, wait. I hung up. Then I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank account. The automatic payment to David's mortgage company was scheduled for December 20th, 5 days away. I clicked Cancel Recurring Payment. Confirmation screen. Are you sure you want to cancel this automatic payment? I thought about Patricia. I thought about Christmas dinner at a country club where I wasn't suitable company. I clicked Confirm, Payment Canceled. But that was just the beginning. After I canceled the payment, I sat in my workshop for a long time, just thinking. The space was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator where I kept beer and Patricia's homemade pickles, still making my way through the last batch she'd canned. Here's what David and Victoria didn't know about their mortgage situation. I owned that house, not them, me. When they came to me 3 years ago asking for help, I didn't just give them down payment money. I bought the house outright and let them think they were making mortgage payments to the bank. See, after Patricia died, I knew David was going to need more help than he was willing to admit. Victoria's student loans were crushing them, $3,200 a month just for her law school debt. David's salary was decent, but not decent enough to carry a $485,000 mortgage on top of everything else. So I worked with my attorney, Tom Anderson, who I'd rewired his office building back in 2019. Tom suggested something called a private mortgage arrangement. Basically, I would buy the house in my name, and David would make payments to me instead of a bank. The advantage for David, lower interest rate, more flexible terms. The advantage for me, complete legal control if things went sideways. Frank, Tom had said, this protects everyone. David gets his house, you get security, and if something happens to you, the house transfers to him anyway through your will. It seemed like a win-win at the time. But here's what I never told David. The mortgage payments he'd been making weren't going to a bank. They were going directly into a separate account I'd set up, earning interest. Every dollar he paid me was still his money, essentially. I was just holding it. My plan was to surprise him on his 30th birthday, give him back all the payments plus interest, sign over the deed, and tell him how proud I was that he'd fulfilled his commitment. That was before Christmas became a social circle issue. Now, sitting in my workshop, I realized David was about to learn some uncomfortable truths about his financial situation. I pulled out my phone and called Tom Anderson. Frank, how are you holding up? It's been a while since we talked. I'm okay, Tom. Listen, I need you to pull the paperwork on David's house. Everything all right? Depends on your definition of all right. How quickly can you get me copies of the deed and mortgage documentation? 24 hours. Maybe less if it's urgent. It's urgent. Frank, what's going on? I told him about the Christmas conversation, about 3 years of increasing disrespect, about David excluding me from family gatherings. Tom was quiet for a long time. Frank, you know what this means, right? Legally, I mean. I know exactly what it means. You could give them 30 days' notice and they'd have to vacate. It's your property. I'm aware. But Frank, this is your son we're talking about. Tom, let me ask you something. If your son treated you like hired help after you'd given him everything, what would you do? Honestly, I don't know. Well, I'm about to find out what I'm made of. You want me to prepare termination documents? Not yet. First, I want you to be somewhere this weekend. Where? Riverside Country Club, Christmas dinner. Victoria's family will be there. Frank, I'm not a member at Riverside. You are now. I'm sponsoring your guest membership. Temporary, just for the weekend. Why do you want me there? Because when David learns the truth about his mortgage situation, I want it to be in front of the people he's chosen over family. Frank, are you sure about this? Tom, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This could destroy your relationship with your son. Tom, my relationship with my son is already destroyed. He just doesn't know it yet. All right, I'll be there. And Tom, bring the paperwork. Which paperwork? All of it. After I hung up, I walked over to the safe I keep hidden behind my toolboard. Inside were the important papers Patricia and I had accumulated over 34 years of marriage. Property deeds, insurance policies, bank statements, investment records. And something else David didn't know about, the recordings. I'd been documenting everything for months. Christmas dinner at Riverside Country Club was exactly what you'd expect from a place that's been excluding people like me for 70 years. I wasn't invited, but that didn't stop me from making reservations. Members can bring guests, and technically I'd sponsored Tom Anderson's temporary membership that afternoon. Tom could bring a guest. That guest was me. David and Victoria had no idea I was coming. They'd arranged their perfect evening. Victoria's parents down from Connecticut, David's boss and his wife, a few colleagues from Victoria's law firm, 12 people total, seated at a long table in the mahogany dining room overlooking the Charles River. I arrived at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before their reservation. Tom was already there, looking uncomfortable in his best suit. "Frank, I still think this is a bad idea." "Tom, sometimes bad ideas are the only ideas that work." The hostess seated us 3 tables away from David's party, close enough to hear conversations, far enough away to observe without being immediately noticed. I watched my son through the dinner crowd. He was animated, confident, telling stories about his work. Victoria kept her hand on his arm, guiding conversations, redirecting topics when they got too personal. At 7:15, Victoria's father, Richard Sterling, stood up to make a toast. "To David and Victoria," he said, raising his wine glass, "and to the bright future ahead of them." Everyone drank, polite applause. Then Richard continued, "David, I have to say I admire your drive. Building a career, buying a beautiful home, establishing yourself in the community. You've really pulled yourself up by your bootstraps." More applause. That's when David said it. "Well, Victoria's been a huge influence. She's taught me so much about presenting myself professionally, about fitting into environments like this." "That's wonderful," said Victoria's mother. "It's so important to surround yourself with people who elevate your standards." "Absolutely," David replied. "I mean, growing up, I didn't have exposure to places like this. My background was pretty limited." "But you've overcome that," Richard said. "That's what I respect about you. You didn't let your circumstances define you." David nodded. "Right. I made a conscious choice to evolve, to grow beyond where I came from." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Victoria jumped in. "David's father is a lovely man, but he's very set in his ways. Traditional working-class values. David's done an amazing job adapting to a more sophisticated environment." "That must have been challenging," said one of Victoria's colleagues. "It was," David said. "But you know what they say. Sometimes you have to distance yourself from people who hold you back." Tom looked at me. "Frank, wait," I whispered. Victoria's father leaned forward. "David, where does your work ethic come from? That's not something you can learn in business school." David smiled. "Honestly, I think I get that from my mother. She was a teacher, very disciplined, very principled. She taught me that success comes from education and surrounding yourself with the right influences." "And your father?" Richard asked. David hesitated. "My father he's from a different generation, different values. He means well, but his perspective is pretty narrow. Blue-collar mentality, you know. Work with your hands, keep your head down, don't aim too high." "How sad," Victoria's mother said. "Thank goodness David had strong maternal influence." "Yeah," David said. "Mom always pushed me to think bigger, to not settle for limitations." I stood up. Tom grabbed my arm. "Frank, don't." But I was already walking toward their table. The conversation died as I approached. David's face went white. Victoria looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Evening, everyone," I said calmly. "Beautiful night for dinner." "Dad," David's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "Enjoying Christmas dinner." "You remember Christmas, don't you, David? Family holiday?" Richard Sterling looked confused. "David, is this—" "Richard Sterling," I said, extending my hand. "Frank Miller, David's father." Richard shook my hand cautiously. "Mr. Miller, David's told us so much about you." "Has he? That's interesting. What exactly has he told you?" Silence around the table. "Dad," David said, "maybe we should—" "No, I'm curious. David was just explaining how his work ethic comes from his mother, how his father's perspective is narrow and limited." Victoria tried to intervene. "Frank, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there? Because I heard my son tell this table that sometimes you have to distance yourself from people who hold you back." More silence. "David," I said, "tell these nice people about your mortgage." "Dad, please. Tell them how much you pay every month." "This isn't the place." $2,890. That's how much David pays every month for his beautiful home in Newton. Richard nodded politely. "That's wonderful that he's managed to establish himself so well." "Oh, he hasn't paid a dime," I said. The table went completely silent. "I'm sorry?" Victoria's mother said. "David hasn't made a mortgage payment in 3 years. I have." David was staring at his plate. "Dad, stop." "Every month. $2,890. Want to know the total, Richard?" "Frank, please," Victoria whispered. $104,040, plus the down payment, plus closing costs. Grand total, $137,240. You could hear forks being set down around the dining room. Other conversations were stopping as people tuned into our table. But here's the really interesting part, I continued. David doesn't have a mortgage. What do you mean? Richard asked. I mean, I own his house, bought it outright. David's been making payments to me, not a bank. Victoria looked like she was going to be sick. So when David talks about pulling himself up by his bootstraps, what he really means is his father bought him bootstraps, laced them up for him, and carried him up the ladder. Dad, you're embarrassing yourself, David said quietly. Am I? Let me tell you what's embarrassing, son. What's embarrassing is listening to you tell these people that your father holds you back while I'm paying for the roof over your head. The entire dining room was listening now. What's embarrassing is hearing you credit your success to everyone except the man who made it possible. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded paper. David, do you know what this is? He wouldn't look at it. It's the deed to your house. Want to see whose name is on it? I unfolded the paper and placed it on the table. Franklin James Miller, that's me, son. I own your house. I own your life. And apparently, I own your respect because you sure aren't giving it freely. Victoria started crying. Now, I said, looking around the table, would anyone like to know what happens when you exclude family from Christmas? The silence at that table was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard. 12 people staring at a piece of paper that changed everything they thought they knew about David Miller. Richard Sterling picked up the deed with shaking hands. His wife leaned over to read it. Victoria's law firm colleagues craned their necks to see. This is real? Richard asked. Recorded at Middlesex County Registry of Deeds on April 3, 2021, I said. You're welcome to verify it. David finally looked up. His face was red, but not from embarrassment, from anger. Dad, you had no right to do this here. Didn't I? You had the right to discuss my limitations with strangers, but I don't have the right to discuss my generosity? Victoria was trying to hold herself together. Frank, we can talk about this at home. Home? Which home, Victoria? The one I bought? Or are you talking about your parents' home in Connecticut? That's when Tom Anderson appeared at our table. Excuse me, he said, carrying a manila folder. Mr. Miller, you asked me to bring these documents. Tom was playing his part perfectly. Tom Anderson, I said to the table. My attorney. Tom, these are the folks David was telling me about, the ones who think he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Tom nodded politely and handed me the folder. Everything's here, Frank. Property records, payment history, bank statements, investment portfolio summary. I opened the folder and spread the papers across the table like I was dealing cards. Let's see what we have here. David's house. $485,000 purchase price. 0 mortgage balance. Paid in full by Franklin J. Miller. I placed the first document in front of Richard. David's car, 2022 Honda Accord. Lease payments made by Franklin J. Miller. Second document. Victoria's BMW X5. Down payment and lease payments. Franklin J. Miller. Victoria's mother gasped. Victoria's student loan payments. $3,200 monthly for 3 years. Total paid, $115,200. Paid by Franklin J. Miller. More papers hitting the table. David was shaking. Dad, stop this, please. Credit card payments, insurance premiums, vacation to Napa last year, all Franklin J. Miller? I looked up at the table. Anyone want to guess the total? Richard was adding numbers in his head. This has to be $342,000. That's what I've spent on David and Victoria in 3 years. The dining room was completely silent now. Every table was listening. But wait, I said, pulling out another document. There's more. Tom handed me a bank statement. This is my current financial position. Liquid assets, $312,450. Investment portfolio, $1.2 million. Real estate holdings, $2.3 million. Victoria's father choked on his wine. Total net worth approximately $3.8 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. So when my son talks about his limited blue-collar father with narrow perspectives, he's talking about a man worth 4 times what this entire table makes in a year. Richard Sterling looked like he'd been slapped. But here's my favorite document, I said, pulling out a final paper. David, you remember that recording app you helped me install on my phone last Christmas? The one you said would help me remember important conversations? David's eyes went wide. I've been using it. Amazing technology. Want to hear some highlights? I pulled out my phone and found the audio file. This is from 3 weeks ago. David and Victoria discussing Christmas plans. I hit play. David's voice filled the dining room. We can't have my dad at the club Christmas dinner. He'll embarrass us. Victoria's voice. He means well, but he just doesn't fit in with our crowd. David. Exactly. My dad's great for fixing things around the house, but we're trying to build relationships with important people. Victoria. Maybe we can take him to that diner on Route 1 afterward. Keep him happy but separate. I paused the recording. Should I play more? I have 47 minutes of these conversations. The table was frozen. Here's another good one. This is from last month, Victoria talking to her mother on speakerphone. I hit play again. Victoria's voice. David's father is sweet, but he's very simple. We're working on helping David establish himself with a more sophisticated crowd. It's better if we limit his exposure to certain family elements. Her mother's voice. That's very wise, dear. David's lucky to have you guiding his social development. I stopped the recording and looked at Victoria's mother. Recognize that voice, Mrs. Sterling? She was staring at her hands. Now, I said, let me explain what's going to happen next. I pulled out the final document, a 30-day notice to quit premises. David, this is your official eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate my property. Dad, you can't. I can and I am. Tom? Tom cleared his throat. Mr. Miller owns the property outright. Massachusetts law allows him to terminate any rental agreement with proper notice. Since no formal lease exists, 30 days is more than sufficient. But Dad, David said, where are we supposed to go? I don't know, son. Maybe you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Victoria was openly crying now. Frank, please. We can work this out. Can we? Victoria, 3 hours ago you explained to these people that I have narrow perspectives and limited values. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? I didn't mean... Which is it? Am I a limited man with narrow values, or am I someone you want to work things out with? She couldn't answer. Richard Sterling finally found his voice. Mr. Miller, I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding. Has there? Richard, your daughter just spent the last hour explaining how David overcame his background. What exactly did he overcome? Well, he overcame a father who paid for his education, bought his house, covered his wife's debts, and subsidized their entire lifestyle while they complained about his limitations. I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. Richard, you asked where David gets his work ethic. Let me tell you where David gets his work ethic. He gets it from a man who built a business from nothing, who worked 70-hour weeks for 40 years, who employed 12 people and helped them feed their families. I stood up. He gets it from a man who sold everything he owned to pay for his wife's cancer treatment, then spent his retirement savings giving his son a life he couldn't afford on his own. I looked at David. That's where your work ethic comes from, son. Not from distancing yourself from limitations, from embracing the man who never limited you. The dining room was completely silent. But you know what? You're right about one thing. Sometimes you do have to distance yourself from people who hold you back. I picked up my coat. Merry Christmas, everyone. Enjoy your sophisticated dinner. As I walked toward the exit, I could hear crying, angry whispers, and chair legs scraping across hardwood floors. Tom caught up with me in the parking lot. Frank, that was necessary. What happens now? Now David learns what it's like to pay his own bills. Are you really going to evict them? I looked back at the club, where warm light spilled out of the dining room windows. Tom, I raised a boy who would share his last dollar with a stranger. Somewhere along the way he became a man who won't share Christmas dinner with his father. That doesn't answer my question. The eviction notice is real. What David does with it is up to him. Meaning if he wants to stay in that house, he's going to have to remember how to talk to his father like family instead of hired help. I got in my truck and drove home, leaving David to explain to his sophisticated friends why his limited father owned their entire world. I didn't sleep that night. At 2:17 a.m. my phone started ringing. David. I let it go to voicemail. Then Victoria called. Then David again. By 3 a.m. I had 11 missed calls and 14 text messages. The text messages started apologetic. Dad, I'm sorry. We need to talk. Please call me back. We can work this out. I didn't mean what I said at dinner. Then they got desperate. Dad, the bank called. They said our December payment was declined. Victoria's crying. She thinks she's going to lose her job over this. Please don't do this. We're family. And finally, angry. This is emotional manipulation. You're destroying our lives over one dinner conversation. Mom would be ashamed of you. That last text got me out of bed. I called David back at 5:45 a.m. Dad, thank God. David, don't ever use your mother's memory to manipulate me. Dad, I didn't mean... Your mother died believing you were a good man. Don't prove her wrong. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you've done. I made a mistake. I said things I shouldn't have said. No, David, you didn't make a mistake. You revealed who you really are. That's not fair. Fair would have been inviting your father to Christmas after he paid for your life for 3 years. Dad, please, just tell me what you want me to do. I want you to choose. Choose what? Your wife's social circle or your father's respect? Dad, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Yes, it does, because you've spent 3 years proving you can't handle both. What does that mean? It means you have 30 days to decide if you want to be David Miller or Victoria's husband. That's not a real choice. Sure it is. David Miller is the kid who wouldn't take a tip from Mrs. Kelly because family doesn't charge family. Victoria's husband is the man who charges his father admission to Christmas dinner. Dad, which one do you want to be? Silence. David, here's what's going to happen. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. What do you mean? Independence, self-reliance, the chance to pull yourself up by your bootstraps without your limited father holding you back. Dad, I can't afford what? The house payments, car payments, insurance, credit card bills, Victoria's student loans? You know I can't. Then you're going to learn what I learned 40 years ago, how to live within your means. Dad, this will destroy us financially. Good. Maybe financial pressure will teach you the respect that financial support couldn't. You're really going to evict us? David, I'm really going to stop subsidizing disrespect. What does that mean? It means as of January 1st, you're going to pay your own bills, all of them. The house, you can stay if you want, but you'll pay me market rate rent, $3,400 a month. Dad, that's more than the mortgage was. That's what real landlords charge, son. I've been giving you the family discount. The cars. Transfer the leases to your name or give them back. Victoria's student loans. Victoria's problem. Dad, she'll leave me. Then you'll know what's more important to her, you or your bank account. This is insane. David, let me explain something about insanity. Insanity is a man paying $137,000 so his son can have a life he can't afford, then listening to that son explain to strangers how he overcame his father's limitations. I was just trying to fit in. No, you were trying to trade up. There's a difference. Dad, please, give me another chance. I'm giving you exactly what you want, David. The chance to succeed without your embarrassing father's help. But we can't afford... Then get better jobs, move to a smaller house, drive older cars, live like adults instead of children with a trust fund. Dad. David, I'm not angry anymore. I'm disappointed. And disappointment doesn't write checks. What about Christmas? What about family? Family is what you value, David. You've spent 3 years showing me where family ranks in your priorities. Below what? Below Victoria's career, below social status, below the opinions of strangers at country clubs. That's not true. Prove it. How? Figure it out. You're a Harvard man. You should be able to solve this problem without Daddy's help. Dad, I love you. I love you too, son. That's why I'm doing this. I don't understand. You will. I hung up and drove to Tom Anderson's office. Tom, I need you to prepare some documents. What kind of documents? Rental agreement. Market rate. Month-to-month lease. Frank, are you sure about this? I'm sure that my son is about to learn the difference between earning respect and inheriting it. What if he can't afford it? Then he'll move somewhere he can afford. What if Victoria leaves him? Then he'll know what she really valued about their marriage. Frank, this could backfire. You could lose your son completely. Tom, I lost my son 3 years ago. I just didn't know it until yesterday. What if he chooses Victoria's world over yours? Then I'll know I raised a fool instead of a man. And if he chooses you? Then maybe it's not too late to save him. Tom prepared the documents. Clean, legal, fair. No family discounts, no special treatment, no subsidized respect. Just market rate for market behavior. David had 30 days to decide who he really was. The consequences started immediately. Victoria's law firm called an emergency partners meeting on December 26th. Apparently, Richard Sterling had made some phone calls. Word was spreading through Boston's legal community about the young lawyer whose lifestyle was funded by her father-in-law, the same father-in-law she'd publicly dismissed as limited and simple. Victoria's billable hours were quietly reduced. Partnership track conversations were postponed. Nobody said anything directly, but the message was clear. Manage your personal drama or find another firm. David's boss at the marketing company started asking questions about the BMW in the employee parking lot. When you're making $68,000 a year and driving a $67,000 car, people notice. Especially when your father-in-law owns the house you claim to afford on your own. The mortgage company David thought he'd been paying for 3 years didn't exist. When he called to explain that his payment had been declined, they had no record of him as a customer. It took him 2 days to figure out that all his payments had been going to his father's personal account. Victoria's parents cut their Connecticut visit short and flew home on December 27th. Mrs. Sterling left a note. We're disappointed in how this situation reflects on our family. Victoria needs to decide whether she wants to be a Sterling or a Miller. The social consequences were swift and brutal. David and Victoria were quietly uninvited from New Year's Eve at the country club. Their names were removed from the spring fundraiser committee. Victoria's mother stopped returning her phone calls. But the financial consequences were worse. Without my support, David and Victoria's monthly expenses exceeded their income by $4,200. The BMW lease payment alone was $890, more than David spent on groceries. Victoria's student loan payments were $3,200 monthly. Add rent, insurance, utilities, and credit cards, and they were drowning. David tried to return the BMW, but breaking the lease early cost $8,900. They didn't have it. Victoria applied for financial hardship deferment on her student loans, but her law firm salary was too high to qualify. They listed their furniture on Facebook Marketplace. Victoria's engagement ring went to a jewelry buyer for $12,000, half what David had paid for it. But the worst consequence was the silence. Neither David nor Victoria called me for 6 days after Christmas. No apologies, no explanations, no acknowledgement that anything had changed. On January 2nd, David finally showed up at my house. I was in my workshop, organizing tools, when I heard his car in the driveway. Not the BMW, an old Honda Civic with rust around the wheel wells. He knocked on the workshop door. Dad? It's open. He came in looking like he'd aged 5 years in a week. Unshaven, rumpled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. We need to talk. Okay. I can't afford the rent you're asking. I know. The cars are going back to the dealer. Okay. Victoria might have to move back with her parents. That's between you and Victoria. Dad, I'm drowning here. I know. Can we work something out? What kind of something? Lower rent. Payment plan. Something. David, what's changed since Christmas? Everything's changed. No, what's changed about you? He was quiet for a long time. I'm broke. You were broke 3 years ago. That's not new. I'm embarrassed. About what? About what I said. About how I treated you. Why are you embarrassed now when you weren't embarrassed then? Because everyone knows. Everyone knows what? That I was lying. That I couldn't afford my life. That my father was paying for everything while I was ashamed of him. He started crying. Dad, I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? For excluding you from Christmas. For letting Victoria talk about you like that. For pretending I was self-made when I was really just subsidized. David, do you know why I did this? To punish me? No, to save you. From what? From becoming someone your mother wouldn't recognize. He wiped his eyes. Dad, I don't know how to fix this. Do you want to fix it? Yes. Then start by being honest. With Victoria, with yourself, with me. What does that mean? It means deciding whether you want to be part of this family or above this family. I want to be part of it. Then act like it. How? Come to Sunday dinner. Bring Victoria if she wants to come. Don't bring her if she doesn't. Dad. David, your mother used to say that respect is like a bank account. You can make deposits and withdrawals, but you can't spend money you don't have. What does that mean? It means you've been overdrawn for 3 years. Time to start making deposits. What kind of deposits? The kind your mother would be proud of. 6 months later, David and Victoria were divorced. She moved back to Connecticut and married one of her father's business partners within a year, a man who understood social circles and never questioned the family hierarchy. David moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Medford and drives a 2015 Toyota Camry. He makes his own car payments now. Every Sunday he comes to dinner. We cook together, something Victoria never allowed because she thought it was beneath them. We talk about work, about life, about the future he's building with his own hands. He's dating a nurse named Sarah who grew up in South Boston. Her father's a firefighter. When David introduced me to her parents, he said, "This is my dad, Frank. He built the most successful electrical contracting business in Greater Boston. No qualifications, no apologies, no embarrassment." Sarah's father and I spent the evening talking about union work and retirement planning. David joined the conversation instead of redirecting it. "Here are my new family rules. Respect is non-negotiable. Financial support requires mutual respect. Family means loyalty, not charity. But most importantly, money is a tool for building relationships, not buying them." David learned that the hard way. Victoria never learned it at all. Patricia would be proud of the man David's becoming, and ashamed of the man he almost became. The difference is boundaries. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. And remember, real class isn't about money. It's about how you treat people who can't do anything for you. Family isn't something you overcome. It's something you honor.